Hey, everybody, and welcome to this live stream edition of the Athletic Hockey Show, teeing up the 2022-2023 NHL regular season. Ian Mendes, Sean Gentille with you for the next hour. We're going to have a lot of fun here, a bunch of guests. Got to ask you this, though, Sean, just to start this off. Regular season technically started on Friday with the Preds and the Sharks, but that kind of felt like that's like a soft launch, right, of the season. Didn't quite have the traction here in North America, did it?
How much of that game did you watch? Be honest.
None. I didn't see any of it.
Don't lie to me. I saw Ellie Tolvanen's goal for Nashville, and then after that, I just kind of phased out. That's a good thing to do. I mean, good for those guys, especially like Tomáš Hertl, who's playing in Prague. He's from the Czech Republic. I talked plenty of times over the last few weeks about how many family and friends he was going to have. This is a great experience for those guys who, especially the Euro players. But man, you said it. That's a soft launch. I thought you were going to ask. I thought you were going to ask about, by the way.
What's that?
The jaunty introduction music there. Yeah, the weight music.
90s. That felt like a 90s EA Sports.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say. That was PlayStation 1 like menu selection music.
Exactly. I'm like, yeah. I got to make sure I don't have manual goalie selected here. That's how I felt when I heard that music. All right. We got a fun show lined up for the viewers and the listeners coming up the next hour. We've got Eric Stevens, who covers the Anaheim Ducks, going to join us later in the hour. Peter Baugh, who, of course, did a wonderful job covering the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. Peter will drop by around 2:30. Arthur Staple, who covers New York for us, around 2:15. But we're going to kick it off here with Pierre LeBrun, who I think is all set to join us here to start the show. Everyone, Sean, Pierre LeBrun, senior writer with us here with The Athletic, TSN Hockey Insider, and now adding to his resume, co-host of the Got Your Back podcast with our pal Ryan Rishaug, right?
Yes, we're a couple of podcasts in here, Ian and Sean. Thanks for having me on, and it's been an absolute blast. Ryan does all the work. Yeah. So Scott Burnside will attest of all the years he co-hosted a podcast with me that someone has to do the work, and I just show up and I criticize and I whine. And we have a podcast, so it's been great.
I've always said in so many different facets of life, Pierre, you're my role model, and that's a big one. You just show up, you say whatever, leave the outlines of somebody else. Just come on.
You got it, brother. We're good. You got it. That's how it works.
I love it. And Gentille, by the way, you're outnumbered 2-1 right now with Cowboys fans.
I was just about seriously, the light bulb went off when I saw the hat, because Pierre's. You guys are both loud and proud and very obnoxious Dallas Cowboys fans. So I should have known it was coming.
I'll wear it next Monday, even if the Eagles destroy our team.
You have
to wear it either way.
I thought you were going to show up in a Cooper Rush jersey. Come on, just the hat. We need to go all in here.
Well, I think Parsons would be my new jersey when next time I buy one. I think it'll be all defense from here on in, at least for this year.
Right. Love it. Hey, listen, Pierre, thanks for joining us for this season preview edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. And it's funny because I think everybody goes into the season thinking maybe this is our team's year to take that next step. But as I read your column today, 10 burning questions, no point in watching the season, Pierre. We're just going to get a repeat of the Stanley Cup final, right? Tampa and Colorado.
Which I guess you could accuse me of being Captain Obvious. On the other hand, it almost never happens. So I kind of feel like I'm actually going out on a limb to some degree, because it is hard to get back to the dance. And in this case, I'm saying Tampa's going back for a fourth time to this Stanley Cup final. And I just think it's possible. I think the way the Lightning and the Avalanche have managed their cap and managed their core players, that they're right there in the top five for sure. Everyone agrees on that. Whether or not they can, have some luck with health and injury and get to the final series remains to be seen. But I said, you know what? Why couldn't these two teams meet up again? And boy, no one would benefit more than us, because that, of all the cup finals I've covered, that was maybe the most entertaining of my entire career, being there in person last June for Tampa and Colorado. So perhaps part of this is just me wishing to see another Avalanche Lightning Stanley Cup final.
One of your other big picks was Cale Makar for Hart. We're in the same camp on that one. I went with him there too.
I saw that in your picks, Sean. Yes.
Are we just bored of voting for McDavid? Is that what it is? Are we part of the same? We part of the same tribe on that?
Well, I think first of all, it allows me, as always, to push an agenda, and one of them is that defensemen never win the Hart. I mean, can you imagine that Nick Lidstrom, and again, I'm a voter, and I've voted for a long time in the NHL awards, so I'm as guilty as anyone else, but let me point that out. But Nicholas Lidstrom won 7 Norris trophies and never won a Hart trophy.
It's one of the,
it's just mind-boggling to me. No one's won the Hart as a defenseman since Chris Pronger in 2000. Why not Cale Makar, who to me showed in the playoffs when he won the Conn Smythe as MVP? By the way, we never have a problem giving a defenseman the MVP in the playoffs when it matters most, by the way, going back to Duncan Keith and et cetera. But I just think, McDavid and Draisaitl are always going to have that vote splitting issue, no matter what side you are on it, you have to acknowledge the issue, right? In terms of the PHWA vote. Austin Matthews could obviously repeat, but, I just think that when you look at how Cale Makar is separating himself at his position potentially with another step this year, why wouldn't he be in the MVP conversation?
Yeah, I want to know, are Blue Jackets fans all over Pierre LeBrun this morning? Because in your column, 10 burning questions, you asked the question, which player will be the biggest disappointment? Now, Columbus fans, Pierre, they finally have something to cheer about. They get the most sought-after free agent, and then here comes the wet blanket Pierre LeBrun saying, no, he might be the biggest disappointment this season.
I believe I said one of the biggest disappointments. But yes, it's still negative. And I think, listen, as I wrote, I think he's probably still good for 95 points. The point I was making is that to feed off what he did last year, where he was one of the best players in the world, 115 points, an incredible season by any measure in Calgary. And then I always sort of examine adjustment periods for players moving from one program to another, one city to another, and then the pressure that he might feel in having made that decision, and whether or not that's a factor early on or not. When you put all these things together, I just think that Johnny Gaudreau is going to be very good this year. I just don't think we're going to get the same version of last year. And to be honest, I'm surprised that Jackets fans took it to that degree in terms of the negative reaction, because I'm still saying he's going to be a very good player, and I think the Jackets are on the way up, but I just don't think we're getting 115-point Johnny Gaudreau. That's my opinion, and I hope he proves me wrong.
Like it's some crazy hot take for you to say that he's going to drop 15, 20 points with Boone Jenner as his center instead of Elias Lindholm. Like, that's just the cost of doing business if you're going from Calgary to Columbus. I could have told you this was going to happen, by the way. Like, Blue Jackets, when we rolled out their season preview, which had them, in the bottom third of the league, they were pissed. They were mad. So I feel like you can thank Dom and his spreadsheet for kind of priming the pump for people to be mad at you for this one. They've got an axe to grind with us already. It's understandable, but we all like the Blue Jackets, right? It's not hater stuff to say like there's still a couple steps for them to take before they're an actual, playoff team. And
it really was. I mean, listen, I have questions about their blue line, but it really was an amazing offseason for a franchise that has lost so many marquee players to win the Johnny Gaudreau sweepstakes, to be able to sign line. I mean, there's so many positive things that have happened in that market. But the fact remains that I was trying to look at some marquee players that I felt were in for a bit of a downturn, and that's the guy I came up with.
Toronto Maple Leafs have not won a postseason series since 2004, almost a 2-decade drought, but Pierre LeBrun says it changes in 2023. But does this matter on the matchup, Pierre? Like, do they have to win the Atlantic Division in order to get a more favorable matchup, or how do you see this playing out?
First of all, I believe there was a younger Ian Mendes and a younger Pierre LeBrun in the rink the last time the Leafs won a playoff series against Patrick Lalime and the Ottawa Senators. We were there. Oh my gosh, that was 18 years ago, going on 19.
God.
Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, let me snap out of it. So I think Tampa, Toronto are 1-2 in the Atlantic this year. I think Florida. Listen, I haven't criticized the Panthers as much of other people for the trade they made. I think that longer term, the Tkachuk signing / trade is going to make a lot of sense for their franchise for all kinds of reasons. But in the interim, I do think they take a bit of a step back competitively. I think that opens the door, health permitted, for Tampa and Toronto to make it a 1-2 race at the top of the Atlantic. And therefore, if I'm right about that, then they avoid each other in the first round. And yes, I do believe this is it, that the Shanna plan delivers a first-round playoff series win, if not more. if not more, once they get that anvil off their back. I do believe this is it.
Okay, how many series do they have to win for it to not be viewed as a catastrophe of a season? Like what needs to happen there? Like, is one going to be enough? If they come out and win a 6-game series in the first, will that be enough to kind of change the narrative surrounding them and have at least like ditch some of the fatalism around that, like at least around this batch of players?
By the way, I love the fact that we're all the same. The only Leafs discussion worth having is what happens come playoff.
Yeah,
the next 6 months are completely
exactly.
useless for the Leafs. I mean, I don't care if they come out of like 8-10-0 or 0-10. Well, I shouldn't say that. 0-10 could be interesting here. But yeah, no, I think that they probably need to win 2 rounds and get to a Final Four for it to feel like the program under Kyle Dubas has achieved finally what it wanted to achieve to some degree. But, the thing you can't predict is what the team looks like health-wise, getting to a second round, et cetera, et cetera. But generally speaking, to answer your question, Sean, I don't think one playoff series is enough. But I just, I do honestly feel that there are all kinds of reasons, we won't get into it, why it hasn't happened for them. But it's almost some of it positive regression that they finally get that bounce. They've been a good team for a long time, and I do think they'll get through the first round.
I mean, do we want to ask like more granular Maple Leafs questions? Like we can go down to the nitty gritty. We can ask what Adam Gaudette's going to bring the Toronto Marlies or whatever. We can really turn this into like
a
Leafs-centric show if it'll make you feel better.
Well, the goaltending is interesting. I mean, listen, you want to talk about hot takes. I actually think Matt Murray is going to bounce back to some degree, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually Ilya Samsonov who's in goal for the first game of the playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think that he's actually the ceiling play here for Toronto as far as first round pedigree, what this guy was supposed to be, and maybe needed to change the scenery from Washington. Would not surprise me if he's and playing in front of a pretty good team here again. There's a bit of a take there. It wouldn't surprise me if it's him in that.
Amazing. Listen, before we let you go, I just realized this, Pierre. I was in the press box for Toronto's last playoff series win in 2004. My wife was pregnant with our first daughter at the time.
Oh my God.
That child is now in university.
She's going to college now.
Yeah, she's in university.
It's been a while. It's been a while in these parts, but you know what? It won't be the last time you guys talk about it this year.
No, exactly. Listen,
it might be. I think I'm done. I think I'm out on the Leafs.
We've had our fill. You know what? They're going to be fun to talk about in April or May, not so much in October. Listen, Pierre, thanks for dropping by. Always appreciate the time and the insight. Looking for your coverage all season long.
All right, anytime, guys. Good luck the rest of the show here.
All right, there goes Pierre LeBrun, who apparently rattled the cages of Columbus fans by saying Johnny Gaudreau is going to be at this point. But it's interesting. I think I agree with both of your premise that, look, if Johnny Gaudreau has 115 points in Columbus, he's probably the Hart Trophy winner, because I don't see a scenario where he could get 115 points. But if he does it, hey, I'm all in. But I think a 20-point regression would still mean an all-star caliber season for Johnny Gaudreau.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just all due respect to Patrick Laine and Boone Jenner and Cole Sillinger and these guys who seem like they're going to be his line mates at one point or another this season. But guys aren't Matthew Tkachuk. Guys aren't Elias Lindholm. It's fine. There's going to be a drop off in production. And again, that's not hater stuff on the Blue Jackets, right? This is just the progression for them. They need 1 year of, being almost there, and another year of development for guys like Sillinger and Ken Johnson and whatever, but before they're a real playoff, potential team.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's going to be interesting because I think teams like Columbus and New Jersey and Detroit and Ottawa all think that, hey, we're going to take a tangible step forward. But to do that, you need someone to fall out of the top 8. And, before we bring Arthur Staple in here, I'm curious because, Sean, we've never had a season where all 8 playoff teams from one year turn around and qualify for the playoffs the next year. There's always at least one season, one team that falls out of the top 8. If I had to ask you, just looking at the East, we'll do the West a little bit later with Eric Stevens, because I think the West is pretty interesting too. But just looking at the East for a second, you had to pick one team that falls off out of the top 8. Who are you going with?
You read my mind on this, because when we were filling out our projections and our predictions for that all staff, full athletic NHL staff batch of predictions that came out a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, I felt terrible because I predicted an identical Eastern Conference playoff picture to last year. We all know that's not going to happen, right? I felt horrible about it, but that to me is one of the most interesting parts of the season is the bottom of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And if there is a team that's going to fall out, I still feel like it's going to be the Washington Capitals, right? That was it. I came into the entire discussion being like, okay, this feels like it's the year that the Caps are going to drop off because of the injuries and whatever. And I just couldn't get there because I'm not going to bet against Alex Ovechkin until he gives me a reason to. And Darcy Kemper is pretty good, right? And that was their single biggest issue more than anything over the course of the last few regular seasons is their goaltending was terrible. And Darcy Kemper, playing for the Avs aside, was a top 5, top 6 goalie in the league last year. So I think he's going to be enough to drag him in. It's boring. It's a boring pick. I was worried about making a boring pick, but here we are.
No, I think a lot of people look at it and it's a race amongst maybe Washington, maybe Boston. You always hear Pittsburgh. It's the same 3 teams, right? Because they've been hanging around for 10, 15 years as perennial playoff teams. But to me, until they miss, they've earned the right to be lock-it-in.
How many times have we said this, right? Like I can't pick against these teams, especially Crosby and especially Ovechkin, until they give me a reason to. I'm going to have to see the decline first, like the true decline in production and success at a team level before I pick against them. I'm just not in a spot where I'm going to predict it myself.
Well,
call me a coward if you must, but that's where I am.
No, well, listen, a lot of people think that maybe a team that's due for a regression, the New York Rangers, right? Mm-hmm. Because they lived off great goaltending and great power play last season. So it's a perfect segue for us to bring in Arthur Staple. Does a great job putting the New York hockey scene for us. And maybe we'll ask Arthur Staple the very same question that I just asked to Sean Gentille. Stape, first of all, thanks for joining the Athletic Hockey Show here.
Good to be here, guys.
Robot Stape. We got Robot Stape. What's up, buddy?
I love it. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we should have had him like do some different lines that we could have. Why was I programmed to feel pain? That should be me covering Ottawa. I should be allowed to talk like a robot. Why was I? Anyway, Stape's going to jump back in. I think the Rangers are interesting because, they were a hair away from getting to the Stanley Cup final last year. And really the rebuild is accelerated at a ridiculous pace when you go back a couple of years. But look, they've got all the pieces. Are you one of those people, though, that think, Sean, that, hey, the Rangers are due for a bit of a regression that they did? Chris Kreider's not – is he going to flirt with 50 goals again and whatever, 25 power play goals? Are they going to cool off a little bit?
They should. Like, is Igor Shesterkin going to have another 940 season? Probably not. But it goes back to what we were saying about Johnny Gaudreau. Like, this is a tough ask. It's tough to expect the goalie to be that good 2 years in a row. It's tough to expect Chris Kreider to score 50 goals and 25 in the power play 2 years in a row. Like, that doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that it's, the odds are kind of stacked against them. But with the Rangers, this has been said plenty of times, they're going to go as far as those young guys can carry them. Like, that is the change. Is the idea that Lafreniere is going to take a step forward and Kakko is going to take a step forward. And that's going to change things, based on what we saw from them for the bulk of last season before they made all those trade deadline additions and went on their little run there. I think Arthur's back, by the way.
Now let's see if is it Arthur Staple or Robot Stape? Let's see.
Oh, I think it's really me now.
There we go.
There he is.
Hey.
What's going on? Hey, listen, great
technological genius over here.
Hey, no worries. That's the nature of doing these live shows. Hey, let me ask you the same question I just asked Sean Gentille, which was, if you had to pick one team that made the playoffs in the Eastern Conference last season that would regress and potentially miss the postseason this year, who's your pick?
I'm going with Sean. I'm saying Washington. I think your guys are right. It's not going to be the same 8, and we're certainly not going to see all 8 spots locked up by whatever it was, November 10th, it felt like last season.
Yeah.
Close enough.
So, yeah, the usual suspects are in there. Pittsburgh, we're waiting for them to fall off. Boston, maybe they won't be able to recover. I just don't think that the bottom 4 of that division is really strong enough to overtake them. But I think in the Metro, I feel like the Rangers are in a good spot. Carolina's in a good spot. Pittsburgh's probably in a good spot. And then that last spot is probably up for grabs. And I don't know if Washington will be able to grab it. The Islanders should be better. Jersey should be better. Columbus should be better. So I think maybe there's one of those four that's got a shot, and maybe Washington's, falling around to that under 50% playoff chance right now, just because they don't look quite as strong as they have in years past. But, predictions are not my forte, so we'll see.
Ian?
Yeah. No, sorry. I thought
no,
you were
sorry. That was weird.
Okay.
Okay. Arthur, from the young guys, who's the most likely to step up and give the Rangers what they're needing? Because we know they're pinning a lot on Lafreniere and Capo, and that young group of forwards. Kravtsov, it seems like you might have something to bring to the table. Which of those guys is the ace in the hole for them this year?
It's probably Lafreniere, at least as far as the guys up front. He's a guy who maybe didn't have such a noticeable regular season last year, but he still had 19 goals, all of them at even strength. He's not going to get any power play one time unless there's an injury this time around too. So it's got to be more even strength. He's starting out on the third line. I have a sneaking suspicion he'll be creeping up into the top six on the right side at some point here in the next month or two. And he's a guy who just, of the forwards, Philip Hedl had a really nice stretch of playoff games that sort of showed what he's made of and what kind of scorer he could be. But I think from day one of the playoffs to the very end, Lafreniere was the guy who raised his game the most. And I feel like he's going to be able to carry that into this season. So maybe we're looking at a 23, 24 goal year, which, if he had any power play time, if he was on a team that needed him on the PP1, that's 30 to 33. So it's a legit season on this team. And, I think he's going to bounce around a little bit, but I have to feel like he's going to find a home in the top six and really be able to produce and kind of bring more of a complete game maybe than he did last year.
Stipe, I'm looking forward to seeing the New Jersey Devils this year because I think they've got a great collection of young players. It looks like they're on the precipice of taking a step. The Islanders are an interesting team. As you look at that three-team, and the trifecta there with the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders, and the fact that they probably all have postseason aspirations. How do you see that rivalry shaking out this season amongst those three teams? And can the Devils actually push themselves into the conversation to be kind of taken seriously now?
I mean, it's funny we talk about it now. The Islanders and Rangers only play 3 times. They're one of the teams that had a game taken away, which is ridiculous. So we're done, I think, in that rivalry by the first week in November.
Sort of like the Flames and the Oilers, by the way. Like the choices.
This is not
choices the league
not
made
a master stroke here from the league, but I hope it's more of a rivalry. The Rangers and Islanders always seem to go back and forth, no matter where they are in the standings. I certainly covered enough of those games on the other side with the Islanders, where even in years where they were bad, they seemed to come through and win a game or two at the Garden. So, that's always a seesaw battle. And Jersey, I feel like, they really have to come out of the gate strong to start this season. They got to stay healthy. They got to get good goaltending. Or else, if they're bobbing along and they make a coaching change, I know sometimes that helps some teams, but I have to be able to see this team have some sort of mental fortitude to get through a rough patch. They've seemed to have just fallen apart, from the first month of the season, the last few years. So if they can do that and they can stay in the hunt, maybe we'll have a real tri-state rivalry. Hasn't seemed to happen for a few decades where all 3 of them are really good. I would take 2 of them making the playoffs and maybe even playing each other in the playoffs to call it a successful hockey season around here.
Is this the season, or I'm talking about this guy like he's been in the league for like 10 years. We're all just waiting on him. But do we see a leap from K'Andre Miller this year? I feel like there's a lot of people that are, think he's ready to elevate his game even more after a pretty impressive run last year.
Yeah, I think of the guys in this team, nobody took a bigger step forward last year than him from the beginning of the year, where maybe Gerard Gallant was thinking about scratching him just because he was making some kind of egregious decisions on the ice. He obviously has the physical skills to make up for any mistakes he makes, but there was a consistent number of mistakes. And I think they stuck with him. Having a steady partner like Jacob Trouba definitely helped. They didn't have to burden those guys with heavy minutes because they've got Adam Fox also. So he's able to kind of ease back into a confident frame of mind. And then by the end of the year, Game 7 against Pittsburgh, the overtime playoff goal winner by Artemi Panarin was on a power play. Who drew that power play? K'Andre Miller with a crazy rush up the ice early in overtime. That not a play you would have seen him make a month or 2 or 3 months earlier. So just seeing him through camp, He seems very confident on the ice, off the ice. I think he knows that this is an opportunity for him, not only because he wants to take a big step forward, but it's a contract year. So, I think the feeling is there for him that he wants to have a big showing, and big showing on this defense doesn't necessarily mean 60 points. I think Adam Fox is the guy who's going to eat up all the points, and Jacob Trouba plays on the second power play unit. Miller's going to have to do it kind of as a more dynamic 5-on-5 PK type of defenseman. So maybe he won't get the notice that the other guys will get if they're putting up the big points. But I think he's a guy that's very important for Gallant for this team.
State, before we let you go, let me ask you the same question that we asked LeBrun, because he gave us his Stanley Cup final prediction. He says it's going to be a repeat. Just look for the Avs and the Lightning. What are you thinking? Right now, it's early October. A lot can change. If you're making a Stanley Cup prediction, what are you going with right now?
I'm going to say Blues over Rangers. I feel like this is going to be an unpredictable postseason. Maybe it'll be predictable with number of the teams that we see in the playoffs. But I feel like the Rangers are probably going to win the Metro in my estimation. Igor Shesterkin, even if he doesn't throw up a .935 and have an incredible year like he had, if he drops down even 15 points and a save percentage, that's still way above league average. .920 is elite goaltending. And I think they have enough from the kids to balance out their scoring and not rely on their top heavy guys. So I think this is going to be a successful year for the Rangers. Take a step forward. Maybe they'll add a certain number 88 from Chicago towards the deadline if they have enough cap space. I think that thing hanging out there, as long as it will, the Rangers have still probably got to be the front runner for that guy as we go deeper into the season. So they're able to add him. I think that kind of puts them at the top of the favorites list in the East. And I like St. Louis. I know some other people don't really think they're even a playoff team, but I just sort of feel like they've got the right mix, coaching, good balance, and I think their goaltending is, can be hit or miss, but I think if Bennington has a nice bounce back year, they get in and they're good enough to steal some series once they get there. So St. Louis over the Rangers. I'll probably be completely wrong, but that's perfectly okay.
All right.
Rutherford over Staple.
Yeah.
In the battle in the beat writer Bono, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
I say always a safe move to predict the team that you largely cover is going to go deep in the playoffs.
Nobody gets mad when you're wrong too. It's great.
No, at all. Hey, listen, I know you probably you got to get to the Garden now, right? For the
soon enough, yeah.
Season opener. So listen, looking forward to your coverage from that one. It's a lot of fun. The season that kicks off tonight. Thanks for taking the time to join us here on the Athletic Hockey Show.
Thanks, guys.
There he goes. No longer a robot. It's Arthur Staple. Always great to have him. So look, we've kind of taken care of the Eastern Conference picture a little bit there with Staple and Pierre LeBrun. Why don't we take a break and let's make a prediction here before we come back. We take a break. Does Peter Baugh rock the what did you call him last year? Indiana
Baugh.
Indiana Baugh. Because he had the Indiana Jones style hat.
It's not a fedora.
Exactly. We want to be clear. It wasn't a fedora.
Cowboy hat.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm gonna say he's wearing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say he's wearing a different hat. But anyway, why don't we take a break? We'll come back on the other side and we'll see what Peter Baugh is wearing. You're watching or listening to, I guess, a live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show 2022-2023 NHL season preview. We'll get back to the podcast in a second, but first, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. You know what? If you're paying attention to the sports world right now, you're seeing more and more athletes talking about the need to tend to their mental health issues, just as much as their physical issues. And you'll hear them talk about needing to take time off to kind of get into the zone. And, you don't have to be a professional athlete, an Olympian, anything like that, if you want to be at the top of your game mentally. Therapy is a terrific way to stay in peak mental shape. And we want to talk to you a little bit about BetterHelp here, because BetterHelp, if you're thinking about, maybe trying a therapist, getting some help, maybe you need to unload some stress, or you're having some, family issues, work issues, stuff related to the pandemic, any of that type of thing, anxiety, depression, BetterHelp is a great option for you. It's convenient, accessible, affordable. And the great thing is it's entirely online. So you don't have to think about, do I have to leave my house and go, track down a therapist and spend time in the car and all that stuff. Logistically, this is great. And you're going to fill out a brief survey online. and you're going to get matched up with a therapist that best suits your needs. And if you feel like, after a session or two, it doesn't work for you, no problem. You can switch therapists at any time. So we want to tell you about BetterHelp, and we got a great opportunity for you here with the Athletic Hockey Show. You can get 10% off your first month. So when you're ready, you feel like you're ready to maybe get at the top of your mental health game, visit betterhelp.com/NHL show, and you're going to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/NHL show.
We're back. I am not hearing Pierre. I'm not hearing Ian.
Sometimes it helps if you unmute the microphone. I've learned that now 2 years after doing a lot of things online. So apologies for anybody watching there for a second.
I'm just glad I didn't assume it was something on my end and just let you sit there and talk.
You knew. It was me. I'll tell you
about that.
Before we get to Peter Baugh, let's just show a little graphic here. So Dom Lucian did the rankings of the top 10 teams in the NHL this year. And certainly there was a lot of debate over the fact that the top two teams were Canadian and number one was Toronto. The Colorado Avalanche sit at 3. As you look at this, before we get to Peter, Sean, is there one team on this list that you're like, wow, I'm surprised that they're either like A, they made the list, or B, like their placement on said list?
Boston.
Yeah. Okay. So me too. 100%.
I know. So I know enough about Dom's statistical model. I know what he puts stock in and just kind of the guts of it. I know enough to know that it really likes the Boston Bruins overall. Like there's always a bias towards what they bring to the table, right? Which is like phenomenal play driving and really high X-goal rates. And there's a lot to like about the Boston Bruins, but I was surprised to see him at 6. And part of the reasons for that is the injuries, right? They're starting without Matt Grzelcyk, and they're starting without Charlie McAvoy, and there's all sorts of
no Marchand, right?
No Marchand.
Taylor Hall is banged up.
I forget?
Yeah.
We also don't know what we're going to get from David Krejci. Like people assume that we're getting, David Krejci from 2 years ago without, he played in Czech last year. He's getting old. Like, is he just going to bang off the rust and still be like a prime 2C for them? Like, I don't know. So there's a lot on it there. I like Boston more than, do I like them to make the playoffs? Yes, I do. I think they're a playoff team, but for them to be 6 overall, that was the one where I was like, okay.
Right. And they got a new coach too. That to me is surprising.
I love Jim Montgomery for Jack Adams, by the way. I feel like everything is lined up for him to make a run at that. We know what he's trying to come back from in Dallas. I was a very ugly end to his time there. We know that he's going to deal with injuries at the start of the season. That's like a great narrative, so I think he's, primed to go on a run and maybe add to his trophy case there. But yeah, that's a lot of stuff for Boston to overcome here in the first couple months.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've talked about Peter Baugh. We saw the Avalanche number 3 on the list. Let's bring him in and let's check out his hat game here in October of 2022. There's no hat.
Oh, wait.
There's no hat.
Oh,
but there is. He's back.
We're back.
He's giving the people what they want. Ian, I think you owe me $10. Is that what we settled on?
Yeah, we did. But now for the benefit, Gentille, of our podcast listeners who won't be able to see Peter Baugh's hat like the viewers, describe it to them. Describe
it. This is the legendary Peter Baugh hat that he bought while he was in Nashville. It's brown. I think it's possibly some sort of felt. He wore it consistently. Felt maybe like a velour, I don't know, suede. There's some sort of like tactile thing going on there. And he wore it over the course of the Avs playoff run to the point where, Nathan McKinnon, early fan of the hat. And it carried over, through the entire run there. So welcome to Pete and his hat. We're happy to see both of you.
That was actually the only day I wore it to the arena was the day Nathan McKinnon liked it. So maybe I should have done it a bit more, but it's back for the show. I give the people what they want.
We love it because you had it last year. Avs win the cup. we come back this year, and look, the Avs are listed as the on Dom's model. They're the number one team in the Western Conference. Pierre LeBrun just said he expects the Avalanche to get back to the Stanley Cup final. Like in Denver, what are the realistic expectations here about this team? Like coming into a season in which they've just won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to go into a season and say like this team will win the Stanley Cup, because it's a very hard trophy to win and you have to have some lucky breaks and stuff. But I think this is a team that the expectation around Denver and my personal expectation is that they're going to be a contender and they're going to be among the top teams in the league, and we'll be playing. I don't know if they'll win the cup, but they'll be playing deep into the playoffs. And yeah, I think it should be they've lost some pieces, but I think they'll also add at the deadline. I think the roster is somewhat similar in talent level to it was at the start of last year. We'll see what they do at the deadline, who they can bring in, but I think that it's a good team and they're going to potentially go pretty far.
I think the biggest reason for concern around them is the losses, especially up front. Nazem Kadri out, that's the big flip from last season. How sold are they on Alex Newhook as his replacement as a second line center? And what is it about his skill set that they think can aptly replace a guy who was as good as Kadri was for them, really regular season all the way through the playoffs, but at least whenever he was healthy? Totally.
Yeah, I think that Alex Newhook is – Jared Bednar was actually pretty forthcoming about how he envisions him kind of playing on this team. He said essentially that he's going to get a shot, and he doesn't mean at second line center, and he doesn't mean a few days or a few games. He's going to get a few months, maybe even until the deadline before the team makes a decision on what they need to do to bolster the roster potentially. So it's definitely a really big opportunity for Newhook. He's a skilled player. He was solid defensively last year. I think there's more scoring ability. He has the potential to be a better scorer than he was last year as a 21-year-old. So I think this is a chance where obviously he's going to be playing a lot more minutes with better players, and he can potentially show that off. I think that the Avs were happy with his preseason. He came in looking big, and he looked quick to me. So I think he's someone that, look, you're not going to get 87 points from Alex Newhook, but if you can get 58, 62, something in that range, like you're really happy, because Nazem Kadri was a luxury for the Avs last year. Like it made them, when both those lines were rolling, it made them almost impossible to beat. You saw that when they went 16-4 in the playoffs. Will they have that combination again of those top two lines? Probably not. But will they have two lines that are good enough to make up the top two lines of a cup contending team? I think absolutely.
It's not often that a team wins the Stanley Cup and they part ways with their number one goalie. I'm getting some Antti-Niemi vibes here with them parting ways, and they're like, hey, we won the Stanley Cup with you, not because of you, and that being Darcy Kemper. What's the feeling there in Colorado around Georgiev, around the goaltending situation with Darcy Kemper out the door?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a fun stat, but I don't have it exactly in front of me, but I think he's assuming he doesn't come back to the Avs at some point later in his career, he'll be the third goalie ever for their one season to be a Stanley Cup winning to start for a Stanley Cup winner. And I think the other two are from like the 50s and the 30s or something. So
do we have a Toronto St. Pat's or whatever mixed in there?
We need probably a Frank McCool 1930 something like that.
Yeah. You won't be finding him on the NHL 99 though, because only expansion.
You never know.
But I think that Kemper was, let's face it, he had a tough postseason. Some of that were because of factors outside of his control. He almost had his eye gouged out by a stick, which looked not very fun. And I think that you saw that really impact his performance pretty much from when he came back in the Blues series all the way into the Cup final. He put together, Darcy Kemper deserves a ton of credit. He played awesome in Game 4, awesome in Game 6, 2 games the Avalanche needed to win. And they won the Stanley Cup with him in net. But I think Alexander Georgiev, they looked at the performance that they got from their goaltenders throughout the postseason last year, and they saw Kemper kind of struggled, especially in the St. Louis series. They won the Edmonton series with Pavel Francouz, and they kind of thought, well, why don't we save $2 million against the Caps, sign a cheaper goalie in Alexander Georgiev, and you have that money to use elsewhere. It gives them some flexibility. And so Georgiev is going to get the opportunity he wants. I talked to him the other day. It was a really interesting interview, and I think he's definitely confident. And the Avs believe that with more playing time, there's more potential there that he wasn't able to kind of bring out of himself in New York just with the circumstances of who he is playing behind. But I think that, it's certainly a question mark. And we'll see how it plays out. It's a gamble, but I think the Avs just looked at their goaltending last postseason and said, we can duplicate that with this tandem.
Where can this team get better? Because we've talked about, the downgrade maybe to Newhook. We've talked about the downgrade maybe to Georgiev. Like, what are the spots on that roster with individual players that you look at and say, this is where Colorado can be stronger than they were last season, particularly in the postseason?
Well, I think there's a world in which this defensive core is just like all-time good. Mm-hmm. I mean, Cale Makar is awesome already. Devon Toews is awesome already. And I think you really saw in the playoffs last year flashes of what Bowen Byram can be. This is a guy who's 21 years old. He's dealt with a lot of concussion issues, but it seemed like he turned the corner at the end of last year. It was awesome in the playoffs, led the Avalanche, and actually led the entire Stanley Cup final in 5-on-5 minutes as a 21-year-old and looked awesome. So if you can get a full year of that production from Bowen Byram, that defensive core could be really, really, really scary. And then I also think that a full year of Artturi Lehkonen is going to go a long way. I think he's such a good puck retriever, especially on the power play, that I think that he fits like a glove there. Losing Kadri hurts, obviously, but I think he works really well with that top power play unit, and I think he's going to play on one of the top two lines for the Avs.
Before we let you go, if you had to pick one team, Peter, in the Western Conference that's the biggest threat, that when you look at them right now as they're currently constructed, you're like, I feel like the Avs are going to have to go through this team. Who is it for you to get out of the West to get back to the Stanley Cup final?
I think the Oilers are going to be really good. And I thought that I was like kind of trendy with that pick, but then I've seen a bunch of other people pick them and now I feel less trendy. But I really, that Oilers forward group is really, really strong. I think Jack Campbell's an upgrade in net. I think that their defensive group, especially if they're active at the deadline, can get better. And I'm really, really curious to see how they do. I think they should be very fun to watch and should be a really challenging team for anyone to play. So I think that's a team that the Avs should, them and Calgary, I would say, are the two teams that would scare me most, with the Blues kind of in the next little range there.
All right. Hey, listen, as we let you go, two things. Number one, time for a shameless book promotion. Why don't you tell the audience, if they haven't had a chance to pick up your copy of Carry Me Home, maybe give us an idea of where they can get it from and how the book launch has gone over the last few months?
Yeah, so we have at the Athletic, we have Carry Me Home, which is kind of a volume of stories from throughout the season. Sean wrote the intro.
Yeah, we did an equal amount of work on that book, Peter, for sure.
But yeah, it just is kind of a look back at all the Avs kind of storylines throughout the year. And then there's another book coming out in November called Force of Nature, which is kind of a deeper reported book about with new material about the Avs Cup run and kind of the making of the team and how this team went from last place in the league in 2017 to hoisting the Stanley Cup.
With forward by Matt Duchesne. Am I right on that?
He did not write the forward. Emily Kaplan wrote the forward.
There you go. Good stuff. Hey, and one last question. Blink 182 announcing the tour is coming. How many stops do they have in Denver?
I don't know. They have one every home game, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
That song was stuck in my head consistently for it still kind of is. Like, it's every time I hear it, Avs fans will be very mad at me, but I've heard it too much now. But they love it, and it's a cool environment. And but yeah, you definitely hear it a lot when you're in Denver.
I've had a revolving door of Blink 182 songs stuck in my head for the last 25 years. So welcome to the club, dude.
Nice. Yeah. Do I get to make my cup pick?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it. Let's go.
All right. I'm a chaos agent. I think I think this is bad. I sometimes make my cup picks on what would be fun, not necessarily like I can't pick the Avs to repeat because that's just boring. But I am picking the Edmonton Oilers over the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Wow.
And it's going to be wild.
I mean, that's the move, right? You make picks like that, And if it comes through, people will think you're a genius. And if not, who cares? Doesn't matter.
Totally.
It was a joke.
Jack Campbell
Chaos
goalie
agent.
goal, overtime, game 7.
Oh,
The Jack Campbell revenge series.
Indiana
There we
Jones, Indiana Bob
You're-
looking into his crystal ball. Let's go.
love it. All right. Hey, listen, thanks for doing this. Looking forward to your coverage of the Avs this season. Looking forward to that new book dropping as well. Listen, thanks for dropping by, and I'm sure we'll get you on some version of the Athletic Hockey Show here in the weeks ahead.
Thank you so much.
All right, there goes Peter Baugh. Does a great job covering that Colorado Avalanche. And hey, that's an interesting move, right? I said this, Stape, if you're a beat writer, the one thing you want to do, you want to kind of pander to your own audience and pick the team that you cover to go deep. Peter Baugh's like, no.
He's
Edmonton, Toronto.
agent of chaos. Kid said it about himself. That's what I've said about him for the last 6 months or so. He knows.
Yeah,
he gets
He
it.
knows. All right. Hey, listen, the final guest here for the hour of the Athletic Hockey Show, live stream edition, is a guy who does a terrific job covering the Southern California beat for us. He is Eric Stevens, and he joins us here on the Athletic Hockey Show from, I'm sure it's warmer. There was actually snow in my area on the weekend.
Snow already.
Yeah, exactly. I know. So
No, thank you.
that Eric Stevens is hitting
That
us up in a
sucks.
much better mood.
Oh yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, we know.
By the way, you're asking me to come on after a guy who covered the Stanley Cup champions, has written 2, maybe 3 books, now on the way, and has that incredible hat that he just showed everyone. So this is going to go downhill from that.
Big shoes.
You got Zegras. We're fine. We can just,
Yeah, exactly. You got
it's an even trade.
Yeah. Actually, hey, listen, let's start there with look, I'm curious because there was a long time, Eric, where those 3 California teams were so good, perennial playoff teams in San Jose, LA, Anaheim was a good team. And obviously it's a down cycle. LA has turned the corner. Has Anaheim turned the corner yet? Or do we still have another maybe painful season ahead for the Ducks?
No, not yet. I think they're still at least a year away. The pieces are coming together, though. I mean, you're starting to see something, obviously. And you mentioned it's going to be centered around Mr. Zegras there in the middle, eventually taking over, the number 1 center role, and hopefully sooner than later, obviously. But Mason McTavish, Jamie Drysdale. There's a young core that's being put together. Troy Terry, assuming that they will resign him after this season. So you've got that, and now they've kind of buffeted with some, I don't know if it's stopgap measures necessarily, but guys like Ryan Strome and Frank Petrano, and even a year or maybe more of John Klingberg. So they've got some veterans to support those young guys. But it's clear that those 4 are going to be central to their efforts, in the coming years. But I don't think they're ready yet. I think this is more of another year of transition, and if they get to the point where they're playing at least some meaningful games in the spring, not in April, but May, for March or so, just something that has some sort of value, to help spring them further forward.
How real is the Mason McTavish hype? Because he's a guy we heard a lot about during the World Juniors, and we saw bits and pieces of him last fall. What have you seen from him, and what can we expect from him in the first little chunk here?
Yeah, Sean, it's a good question because quite honestly, during the preseason, I didn't see a whole lot with him, and I actually kind of wondered if all the hockey he's played. I mean, he's played so much over the past, really the whole calendar year, but he's played on so many teams. He just, got through that, obviously, that incredible experience at the World Juniors and made one of the, greatest, plays in that tournament's history. And he was playing and weeks later, he's playing in the rookie games. And all 3 of them. I honestly wondered if all that hockey kind of started to catch up with him a little bit or whatsoever. So I didn't see a whole lot, but the interesting thing is right at the very end here on Saturday, they actually put they've got him starting out on the wing, but they put him on a line with Ryan Strome and Troy Terry. So there's a picture where they do want him to succeed, and he's obviously going to start out with the club. He's going to start out on the less demanding position of the wing as opposed to his natural one in center. But you're seeing a picture where they do want the kid to succeed. And it's going to be a process like anything else. I don't see him, firing right out of the gate. I see a season where he's really going to be learning what the jump really is like from not only just junior, but even just world junior tournament play to playing every night in the NHL.
So another learning year on deck for McTavish and Zegras and that young core in Anaheim. I'm curious, though, about the other team in Southern California, because the LA Kings, I think, made a nice postseason appearance last year. Not everybody thought that they were ready for prime time. Was that a one-off, an early playoff appearance by LA? Or is this the start, Eric, of something of, hey, you know what? This young core and mixed with the older veterans, they're ready now to be a pretty consistent playoff team for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to be finding that out. That exactly what that is. I mean, inside within their room, they certainly believe that it's the start of something special, maybe the start of an arc of winning and maybe an arc of contending. But yeah, there is that wonder. Did they get career years out of Philip Deneau, and some other veterans? Are they going to be able to replicate that, or is there going to be some sort of regression? What I think, and obviously they're adding Kevin Fiala here to the mix. I mean, a big addition to them, and a sign of what they feel internally where they're at in terms of the evolution of the franchise. But I think, given how the Pacific is now, and some of the teams that they're going to be contending with, I actually think they could be a better team and have a tougher path to making the playoffs this year. I actually think they could be better than last year, but because of the better competition, you got Edmonton, you got Calgary, Vancouver's, at least theoretically, thinks it's better. Vegas, the wild card in this, I think it's going to be a tougher path for them, actually, even though they could be a better team. Is there
what's the internal definition of success for that team? Like, are they expecting to make it back to the playoffs in a winter round? Like, will the season be successful if they don't hit that mark? Like, where are they in turn? Like, because we can sit here and talk about what they did last season, sure, and all that, but what's the expectation, organizationally there, do you think?
That's the word that they've been saying right from the very get-go, whether it's Tom McLellan. We just talked to Rob Blake the other day, or actually this morning, about that. I think the expectation is fair to think that, okay, it's now getting back in the playoffs and being able to win a round. I don't think, and I don't think they think that they're quite ready yet to win a cup. They're not there yet. In fact, they're probably still another piece or two, away from doing that. And we'll see if they can be able to, if they have a successful season, are they going to be able to add at the deadline in order to put themselves in a better position to win rounds? Mm-hmm. But I think it's fair to say that they're expecting to get back in the playoffs. I think missing the playoffs would feel like a step back, for them. But I think that's where they're at, in terms of, and I think back to right around 2010 is when, going back in that sort of that previous decade or whatsoever, they were in a similar position where they were just starting to get into the playoffs with that core centered around Kopitar and Doughty and all those great support players whatsoever. That's where they started to make their rise. And then obviously we saw, the peak in 2012 and 2014. Mm-hmm. I think they're sort of in that similar position where they're just starting to make that trek upward or whatsoever. And again, we'll see how the season plays out. If they can get Kevin Fiala to be the kind of player that he's shown to be, be something similar to the breakout player that he was in Minnesota last year, and really give them a legitimate top line with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe, one that really can not only be productive, but really a line that opponents really need to key on. I think that's going to be really key to, their success this year.
When you were looking at the Pacific Division, you kind of put Vancouver and Vegas in a similar boat. I think you called Vegas a wild card. You said Vancouver is theoretically thinks that they're better. If you looked at those two teams, Eric, and looked at the Canucks and the Golden Knights, you had to pick one of them that you were more certain was going to make the playoffs, who would it be?
I still feel Vegas right now is the better bet. I'm just not as sold on Vancouver, just yet. And trust me, I'm a fan of Bruce Boudreau. I think especially year 2 of Bruce is when his teams really kind of start to take off. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Canucks did that. I mean, he's done that all throughout his career. He starts to turn around, and then year 2 is when his teams make that big step forward. But I think right now Vegas still has, even though they're not particularly deep, they still have some of the top end talent that really you can win with, that you can even compete for a division with, as long as Mark Stone and others are able to stay healthy, basically. And let's not discount, they've got Bruce Cassidy now. They've got a proven winner who's also going to be obviously motivated being with a new team. There's going to be some adjustment there, but the pieces are still there in place for Vegas to contend. But they'll be fun to see, because we all know that it could blow up at any time there with that group.
I think it's amazing to me that we've made it this far, into our conversation without mentioning Quentin Byfield. I feel like so much of, externally, the reason for optimism around the Kings is I think people look at him and say that he's certainly has more to give, and he could be that kind of X factor who makes maybe some kind of jump from last season. But what have you seen from him in camp? What are the vibes surrounding him, in terms of coming into a full season, hopefully for him?
Yeah, see, here's the thing with him. It's a great question. And look, there's high expectations for him. Make no mistake. I mean, they're expecting him to, really take a real step forward and be an impact player. Mm-hmm. What's different with him is that he's in a situation where he's well supported. He doesn't have to center the top line or the second line. He's playing behind Anze Kopitar and Philip Deneau. So they're not expecting or counting on him to all of a sudden become this 60-point performer or whatsoever. But I think what they are expecting from him is to be someone that can not only center that third line, but really help deepen this lineup beyond those top 2 groupings. Because we know once you get to the playoffs, it's that third line. It's to fill out that top 9 that really can be a difference maker in the postseason. And from what I've seen of him or whatsoever, he looks strong. And it's weird saying this because he's 6'5" and 200 and some odd pounds or whatsoever. But he's stronger on his skates. He's possessing the puck a lot more. Yeah, the points aren't coming just yet, whatsoever. And some of that may be, based on who he's playing with. But you're seeing now sort of the groundwork being laid with him, in terms of being a dominant offensive player at times, in the zone, just in terms of the way he's been able to possess the puck, hog it. He's able to make plays. And I think over time, as you see over the course of season 2, you'll see him being able to process plays, better, because he's got the ability. I mean, he's got the ability, he's got the skills to make them and whatsoever. So I think what helps in this instance is that he doesn't have to be a big time offensive player just yet. This is though the year for him to take a big step towards becoming that one day.
Well, Eric, we've done this with every other guest. We may as well do this with you to wrap it up. Let's get the Eric Stevens Stanley Cup final prediction here in October. Who are we going to see head-to-head? Last 2 teams standing in June.
How do you not choose the Chicago Blackhawks? I mean, really, they have it loaded up. This is your year. I mean, the pieces are all in place. How do you not choose
Max Domi for Conn Smythe. Let's go.
A lot of people want to say Carolina. I would like to think it's their time as well. They can get that, if Sebastian Aho or someone from that group, becomes that go-to guy in a series or whatsoever. And eventually you need kind of that player to, sort of step forward and become the guy or whatsoever. I think it's possible that they can certainly do it. But right now, I'm not going to bet against Colorado. They're just they have it in place to repeat. And it's kind of great to see too. It's kind of great to see teams now, make multiple runs at it. Tampa almost, pulled off the three-peat there. Who knows if they get back into the mix? I think Colorado has, a great chance to keep the repeat thing going.
Love it. Listen, we'll leave it there. Look forward to all your coverage of hockey in Southern California here in the season ahead, because a lot of compelling stories from Zegras to Byfield and great young talent on both of those teams. Eric Stevens, thanks so much for dropping by the Athletic Hockey Show.
All right, boys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes. Eric Stevens does a great job covering hockey down there for us. That's pretty much all the time we have, but we can't leave without doing a couple of things. First of all, we can't leave and ask everybody for their Stanley Cup final predictions and then not give our own, right?
Mm-hmm.
So listen, I'll go first. I'm feeling we are going to get a Stanley Cup Finals rematch, but with a twist. It's a rematch from 2006. Give me Edmonton, give me Carolina. That's what I'm going with. Give me Edmonton, give me Carolina. A little bit different. There's not going to be any goalie, shenanigans like there was for the Oilers in 2006 where they lost their top guys and all that. But yeah, give me Edmonton, give me Carolina. I think that would be fun.
Trying to remember what I did in our predictions post. I went Calgary over Carolina.
Okay, so we both have the Hurricane. Even Eric Stevens, all three of us seem to be.
I was glad. I thought we were going to get stacked up on Carolina picks. I thought everybody was going to go with the Hurricanes as their Eastern Conference champion. So we backloaded it. Me, you, and Eric. That's good enough. No, I love Carolina's off season. It's bad luck for them that Max Pacioretty, joins the team and then immediately screws up his Achilles tendon. But he's the kind of guy that they lacked. He's a reliable 35 goal guy, or however you want to classify him. The big thing that he brings is some postseason success, and that's what they missed. They missed the go-to guy. I think Eric said something about it. With Aho, maybe it's him. They need a go-to guy in offensively in a series. There needs to be like an alpha who's out there scoring big goals. And I think Pacioretty gives that to him. But I don't know. I ultimately pick Calgary mainly because it's fun. it's a funny idea to imagine. The changeover resulting in a cup there. I love Jacob Markstrom. I think he's a top 5 goalie in the league. I think he's going to be better rested this season maybe than he has been in the past. And I don't want to pick repeats because they're boring. So
yeah,
go Flames.
I agree with you. That's why I went with the 2006 repeat.
I love it. That's great.
100%. Yeah. And the other thing we want to hit on before we sign off on this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show was and I know you touched on this with Custance in your Monday podcast, but
happy
NHL 99
Thanksgiving, by the way.
project.
Happy fake Thanksgiving to you.
Fake Thanksgiving. That's right. Fake Thanksgiving. The NHL 99 project where, look, we agree that in the Wayne Gretzky is undoubtedly the great player of the last 50-some-odd years.
Yeah, sure. We agree on that. Maybe. Nobody asked me.
At 99 and, the next 99 spots. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We kicked it off. Marc-Andre Fleury makes the list. And I'm just curious here, with Fleury landing at 100, he's an interesting guy, right? Because he won Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh, got to another final, but, had some implosions but really likable guy. Were you surprised that he either made the list or that he was where he was at number 100?
I think that sounds about right. I think what he did in Vegas, I think he was a Hall of Fame goaltender before he went to Vegas. I think that ultimately he would have gotten in based on the cups with Pittsburgh, based on, some of the regular season he had, regular season success, he had before that, meltdowns, aside. But the run in Vegas, winning the Vezina, that kind of sustained high level of individual play we saw from him, to me, is what elevated him into this sort of discussion, right? Where you're talking about the 100 best, post-expansion players. And really, like, I know it's actually surprising to say this because he's 100 and you think there would maybe be, some funny business that goes on with placement, like in lists. But as far as those guys go, as far as the bottom 10 guys go in this list, where there can be a ton of variance, we're going to see it from number 99, which whatever, we can just say it. It's Chris Letang. And, he's there based on 3 people out of 12, and I'm one of them. I think people generally agreed on Fleury. Like, I feel like most people had him it was a lot of placement in the 90s, a lot of placement in the 80s. Obviously, not everybody had him on their list, but I think he was about as non-controversial and non-divisive a guy as you could have had in that spot.
Yeah. So listen, this is going to be a lot of fun in the months ahead. We're going to count these down pretty much on a daily basis, and it provides great fodder for us, great storytelling behind these, but great source of conversation and a banter on all the podcast shows. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to counting this down to, I guess, to number 2, really, right? Because we know Gretzky's sitting in there at number 1. But listen, this was great. The hour flew by, man. Like,
I know, 67 minutes.
Yeah,
I can tell because there's a clock running right in front of me.
Look at that. Is that a sign for the Leafs? 67. The show is 67.
No, wait. We gotta. Yes,
we gotta go with extra.
Pull the plug right now. Let's go.
No, hey, listen. We'll leave it there. I want to thank everybody for, if you watch this live edition of the Athletic Hockey Show, this live stream edition. Look, if you missed part of it, you want to listen again. We're gonna have the entire thing up as a podcast a little later today. So follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a rating and review. We'll certainly appreciate that. You can subscribe to The Athletic for $1 a month for 6 months when you visit theathletic.com/hockey show. I want to remind everybody the Wednesday edition of the Athletic Hockey Show is coming at you with Rob Pizzo, Mike Russo, Joe Smith. They're going to have Nashville forward Nino Niederreiter with them. So that should be a lot of fun on the Wednesday edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Did I get that right? He's with Nashville, right?
He is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All of a sudden, as I said it, I'm like, wait a minute, is he Nashville?
It sounds
like
weird.
He's either in Minnesota, Carolina. He's somewhere. Yeah, that's where he is. So, well, we know for sure he's going to be on the Wednesday edition of the pod. So make sure you tune in to that. That does it. So for Sean Gentille, I guess I'm Ian Mendes saying thanks for tuning in to this special live stream edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. Enjoy the season, and we'll get you again next time.